Good evening, everyone. Hopefully everybody's into the meeting well now. Thank you for joining us this evening. I'm just going to give it one more second or two just to allow everybody else to come into the Zoom call. Thanks again for joining us. Okay, without further ado, I think we'll get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Town of Halton Hills virtual open house. My name is Lisa Kohler, and I am the Executive Director of the Halton Environmental Network and a proud member of the town's multi-stakeholder governance committee for the low carbon transition strategy. As a community, we have the responsibility to honor, care for, and respect all the creation gives to provide us with life. This includes the land, water, air, fire, animals, plants, and our ancestors. The Anishinaabe people have utilized this land for millennia, and we would like to acknowledge their direct descendants, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, as the rightful caretaker and title holder of this land upon which we live, work, and conduct ourselves. We acknowledge our treaty relationship and responsibilities to both the lands and these original peoples. We also recognize that this land is rich in pre-contact history and customs, which include the Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee, and since European contact has and continues to become home for Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples. And it is in the spirit and intent of the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement, whereby we will collectively care for and respect the land, water, animals, and each other in the interest of peace and friendship, and for the benefit of not only ourselves, but our future descendants. Today, our consultant Kira from the Sustainable Solutions Group will be presenting information about the town's low carbon transition strategy, establishing the actions needed to achieve the 2030 net zero carbon targets set out by the Climate Change Emergency Declaration. Then, Michael Dean will provide a brief overview of our governance strategy for the plan. After the presentation, you will have an opportunity to get involved in small groups. Thank you to the almost 60 people who visited the project's page on Let's Talk Halton Hills. We always look forward to hearing from you on that platform. So please, after this call, hop on and let us know what you think. This session will be recorded, so anyone unable to join us can watch this presentation later. Participants will be muted. Your videos will be off throughout the presentation. During the breakout groups, participants will be unmuted and invited to turn your videos on. At any time during or after the presentation, you will have the opportunity to submit your questions using the chat box feature on Zoom. Questions will not be answered during the event, but will be answered and published on the Let's Talk Halton Hills site. I am pleased to note that the Mayor of Halton Hills, Mayor Rick Burnett, and Regional and Town Councillor Jane Fogel are with us on the panel this evening and will give brief remarks soon. Several other councillors are also in attendance, and I'd like to thank and acknowledge them. Councillor Albano, Councillor Somerville, Councillor Brown, Councillor Farrell-Reid, Councillor Lawler, Councillor Ingalls, and Acting CAO Mills. You will not be able to hear from them this evening, but I assure you they will be listening to the presentation and to any questions you may have. And without further ado, it gives me a great pleasure to introduce the Honourable Mayor of Halton Hills, Mayor Rick Burnett. Mayor, take it away.
Thank you very much for the kind words, and good evening, everyone, and welcome to our low carbon transition strategy open house. Halton Hills has been a leader in the climate change arena for a very long time. In fact, we had a green plan going back way back in 2007. And fast forward to this year, our council was one of the first to declare a climate change emergency back in May. Within the declaration, there are 14 goals that we were committed to implementing across our municipality. A lot of work has been done over the past year to create a pathway to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions and become a carbon neutral community by 2030. At the town, we've always supported think globally and act locally to improve our community. We're listening to the scientists and experts on global climate change and the need to make changes in our lives to reduce the carbon emissions for the health of our world. Climate change has long been one of the Council's key interests, and staff's work programs in 2020 have reflected this. We are committed to moving the climate change needle forward with a continued focus on mitigation, adaptation programs such as Stormwater Master Plan, upgrading green development standards, our tree planting program, and of course, our Green Revolving Fund. I'm also proud to announce that Halton Hills recently received multiple accolades at the 2020 Mayor's Megawatt Challenge Forum for its leadership and its role in energy consumption and mitigation climate change. The town was inducted into the 10% Club for its for its positive contribution to the community, health and well-being by lowering energy use by 10% since 2018 at the first Fire Station District 1 in Acton. 3 additional leadership awards for high performance in buildings that have met or surpassed their total energy targets were awarded for Town Hall, Acton Community Center, and the Cedarvale Community Center. Tonight, we're here to launch the development of a low carbon transition strategy here in Halton Hills. This strategy will be guiding pathway to a cleaner, greener community by reducing greenhouse gas emissions in the way we build, live, drive, commute, and work. We will develop this strategy together with our residents and business owners who share a great passion for making a difference in our community here in Halton Hills. I'd like to now pass this over to Councillor Jane Fogel, who is the chair of the Low Carbon Transition Strategy Steering Committee, to say a few words. Councillor Jane.
Thank you, Mayor Rick. And thanks to all of you for your interest in Halton Hills in tackling the greatest challenge of our lifetime, climate change. We're very lucky to live in Southern Ontario, where we have one of the most benign climates on the planet. But if you lived in the Arctic, you would see your entire way of life evaporating before your very eyes. The temperature in Alaska actually reached 90 degrees Fahrenheit this past summer. The permafrost is thawing, which in turn is releasing more methane, which in turn is going up to the atmosphere and causing more heating. It has been reported that 1 million species are at risk of extinction, and that the 20 warmest years have all occurred in the past 22 years. The facts of the situation are all around us, and it can be overwhelming. However, if you search for them, there are other facts that are very encouraging. I look to them every day to inspire me to act. What I know is that there are brilliant, determined people working on a myriad of solutions, ultimately creating things that are real and practical to help us alter the course that we are on. For example, I read last week that GM announced that they are on course to an all-electric future with a commitment to 30 new electric vehicles by 2025. Mary Barra, chairman and CEO of GM, said, "Climate change is real, and we want to be part of the solution by putting everyone in an electric vehicle." That is a stunning change of attitude and a very important change. Likewise, they reported a breakthrough in batteries that will have a range of up to 725 kilometers and cost up to 60% less than the batteries in use today. That's a game changer in technological improvements. Furthermore, the cost of electric vehicles will be comparable to gas vehicles. That will cause a change in the market, causing a massive change in behavior. Consider also that electrification of vehicles will include all types of vehicles, including trucks. When we know that in Halton Hills, our biggest contributor to greenhouse gas emissions comes from transportation, announcements like this make our goal of becoming a net zero community by 2030 sound a little less crazy. Our goal has been described as aggressive, and that's absolutely true. But it is not pie in the sky. It is what we really need to do. Although Halton Hills is a leader in tackling climate change, I can tell you that most municipalities are making at least some effort to curb greenhouse gas emissions, with some like Toronto and Vancouver making major progress. We need every municipality to come with their A game, and that is what Halton Hills is already doing. Tonight, you will hear about what we have been doing over the past year and our plans to mobilize our community, as it will be all hands on deck. Thank you for being here tonight, and thank you for the actions you may personally have taken in your own lifestyle to help us reach our goal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Burnett and Councillor Fogel. I'm very excited to be on this journey with you, and we're excited to hear so much more. The consultation team at Sustainability Solutions Group will present an overview of the process for developing the plan and work done to date. Kira, take it away.
Let me unmute myself. Thank you very much, Lisa. Thank you, Councillor Jane Fogel. Thank you, Mayor Rick Burnett. That was very inspiring to hear. So my name is Kira Belpasht, and I am a senior consultant at Sustainability Solutions Group. SSG has helped dozens of municipalities across the country develop their pathway to a low carbon future. We do this with a unique combination of energy use and emissions modeling and community engagement. This project will take about a year, give or take, from start to finish, with community engagement at the forefront of the work, primarily through a multi-stakeholder governance committee, which Mike will be speaking about, the next panelist, shortly. And actually, many of the members from that committee are on this call today. Let me just move forward. And let me give you a high-level sense of how the project will be unrolling. This process infographic shows the project process at a high level, but it does help give a bit of a sense of the back and forth that takes place between our technical modeling work, which is on the bottom column, bottom row, and the engagement process that's on the top row. Where we're at today is actually the launch event, which you can see about halfway through the top engagement. So that gives you a sense that there has been a bunch of work underway in the background leading up to this presentation today. There are two main modeling deliverables that we will be helping to produce for the town. The first is a reference scenario model that shows where the town will be by 2030 in terms of energy use and emissions without any additional actions. In other words, based on plans and policies that exist today and that are underway. And I'll be showing the results from that modeling in just a moment. The other major modeling exercise we will be undertaking is a low carbon model that shows one technically feasible, locally tailored pathway for the town to achieve its net zero target by 2030. The reference model, which I'll be speaking to shortly, is essential to understanding what actions are needed for the town to get to a net zero future. And it's the engagement that we will be undertaking throughout this process that helps ensure that the low carbon pathway we design builds on the community's resources and is tailored to the community's needs. So now let me take you into some highlights from the reference scenario model. So in the baseline year, which for the purposes of our modeling is 2016, the town of Halton Hills emitted about 476,000 tons of greenhouse gas emissions. If you broke that down per resident, that would be the equivalent of about 6.9 tons per person. And that's about where we are today in the town of Halton Hills. Going out to 2030, without any new additional actions, our model projects that the town of Halton Hills will increase its overall emissions by about 4.5%. What's interesting is that means emissions are actually going down, or it results in emissions going down on a per person basis from 6.9 to 5.4. And that's because the population is expected to grow significantly in the town of Halton Hills, about 45% between 2016 and 2030. Population growth means new buildings, additional heating demand, more trips in cars, more waste going to landfill, and more commercial and industrial emissions as well. Sector by sector, what we see is the leading source of emissions in the town of Halton Hills is transportation, primarily personal use vehicles. We see that decreasing slightly out to 2030, and that's despite the significant population growth and as a result, additional vehicles on the road. But that is because of federal existing regulations that are in place from the federal government to increase fuel efficiency per vehicle. It's also because of a small expected increase in electric vehicle uptake in the town. The second biggest source of emissions in the town is residential emissions. That's primarily natural gas use for heating. And we do see that increasing slightly out to 2030. And the percentage increase of residential emissions is, again, not as significant as population growth because we assume new buildings will be built to code, built more efficiently, and that appliances will also be more efficient. And that's all taken into account in a reference scenario. Industrial emissions are the third largest source of emissions in the town of Halton Hills. And we expect that to grow in line with projected employment growth in the town in those sectors. The next biggest sector is the commercial sector. And again, those emissions are coming down despite some projected growth in the commercial sector. Again, efficiency. And waste emissions are actually coming down. And waste emissions are the result of the decomposition of organic waste in landfill. This is projected to come down slightly, despite significant growth in population, because of the town's current plans for increased diversion. Fugitive emissions are released, we could call them accidentally through the natural gas distribution system, and we expect those to increase slightly with increased natural gas use. Finally, municipal emissions represent the tiniest sliver, the second tiniest sliver actually you'll see on the next slide, and that's for municipal buildings, municipal fleet, for example. And that is coming down, I should just say, because of an aggressive corporate energy plan, or an impressive one anyways. In order to meet 2030 net zero, it will perhaps have to be a little bit more aggressive than that. So we also model the town's energy use and emissions in space. What we see here is a map of the town of Halton Hills broken down by zones. The jargon here is transportation zones, but you don't need to know that. What we're seeing here is the baseline emissions, stationary emissions. So from buildings and industry, commercial, residential, manufacturing, all of these emissions are shown in this map in a baseline. The most emissions intensive zone is this bottom corner, and that's a small industrial park. Well, I shouldn't say small, it's an industrial park. The next one is the downtown Georgetown area, from commercial as well as some industrial emissions and of course residential emissions. Finally, downtown Acton. Going out to 2030, what we see in a reference scenario is expanded emissions around this bottom area, and that's projected growth in that industrial manufacturing area. Well, we call it industrial emissions, but I believe perhaps a more specific way to say that would be manufacturing. The significant expansion of emissions around the Georgetown area, and that's driven by additional residential buildings, especially and commercial buildings, some industrial driven by Vision Georgetown population growth, and finally some expansion also of emissions in the Acton area. Now here what we're looking at is vehicle kilometers traveled, which have associated emissions with them. We see this, the way we account for these, what we call VKT, is we allocate them to the zone where the trips originate. So let's say from home to work or home to amenities. The full vehicle kilometers traveled for each trip will be assigned to the originating zone, so wherever that person lives. And what we see here in a baseline year is the most dense VKTs are coming from the downtown Georgetown area and the residential Georgetown area especially. You also see many coming from the more rural zones. And what we're assuming here is far distances for many home to work trips and home to amenity trips. Please note the top end of the scale here is 7 million kilometers. And when we go out to 2030, what we see is the top end of the scale increases by many-fold. And so you still have those intense VKTs coming out of the existing residential Georgetown areas. But what throws it off and throws off the scale completely is the expected growth in vehicle kilometers traveled from the Vision Georgetown area, making everything else pale in comparison, if you will. To look at this same data in a slightly different format, here are emissions by sector 2016 to 2030 for the town of Halton Hills. The big picture is emissions are increasing. Population growth is driving that emissions growth. Existing plans and policies do a little bit to improve the emissions per capita, but not enough to bring the entire community's emissions down. Where we're going to be going next in this project, with the help from the community, especially from the multi-stakeholder group, which Mike will be talking about, is designing a detailed roadmap, technically feasible, locally tailored roadmap for the town to bring down emissions in each sector. Eventually, we will be producing a graph that looks somewhat like this for the town, based on the modeling work that we do. Each wedge of this, what we call a wedge graph, will be representing one low carbon action that will be implemented over time, some cases gradually, in some cases more aggressively. Different timelines that make sense for the city, for the town, pardon me. And we will also be doing a financial analysis of each action. And here's an example of an analysis we did for another community. But what we do here is we provide for each bar chart here represents one low carbon action. So we assess each one of them in this particular financial analysis, which is not the only financial analysis we do, but it's just to give you a sense of the type of analysis we will be doing. But what we show in this particular graph is the net present value or the marginal abatement cost for each ton of greenhouse gases reduced. So the cost for each ton of greenhouse gas reduction for each action. If it's below the line, it's actually positive in this case, which is an interesting way of showing this. But what you can see here is that actually in this community, we see that overall, the actions have a positive net present value or positive. They actually show returns for each ton of emissions reduced over time. And that's due to lifetime energy savings, potential revenue associated with actions. But I don't want to get too into the weeds now with the financial analysis. What I'm going to do is pass it over to Mike to talk about the multi-stakeholder governance body committee, which will be working with us closely to help develop the detailed pathway for the town.
Okay, thanks very much, Kara. Welcome everybody. Can you just flip back one slide for a second? So as Kara mentioned, I'd just like to talk briefly about a really important piece of this process, which is the multi-stakeholder governance committee. And The reason why we've created this multi-stakeholder governance committee, which I'll explain a bit more about in a minute, is because this strategy is really intended to be a collaborative effort. It's a plan that is intended to be co-created with the community. It's not solely a town initiative, and the actions that we have to implement won't solely be the responsibility of the town. They'll require action from a broad range of stakeholders, organizations, and individuals within the municipality. So a little bit about this committee. Can you flip slide there, Sarah? So the multi-stakeholder governance committee, just so you can see here how it fits into our existing governance processes for climate change mitigation actions at the town. We already have a low carbon transition steering committee, which sits under the Climate Change Action Task Force and has representatives from staff and council and external stakeholders. And they're charged with providing advice and guidance on the overall mitigation processes or projects at the town. And then within that, we have the multi-stakeholder governance committee, which we've recently formed, which is really focused on this strategy itself and helping us bring it to its conclusion and then implement it going forward. As part of the multi-stakeholder governance committee, we have the data subcommittee and the implementation subcommittee, which are both focused on really key areas of interest for us as we move forward. So the data committee will vet the assumptions in our models and our analysis and provide crucial input and oversight, while the governance committee will focus on the development of the implementation plan and the governance structure that will do this work once we finish designing a plan. Please flip slides. Thank you. The selection process for this governance committee involved an open call for applicants throughout the community, as well as targeted recruitment of key stakeholders that we had identified through an initial scan of stakeholder organizations. So that would include local utilities, the Chamber of Commerce, local environmental organizations, and key stakeholder groups that we thought needed to be part of this process. The evaluation of the applicants was based on a scoring framework that was derived from other municipalities, and the design of this committee reflects the expertise and experience of our consultant group, research on transition management, and examples from leading communities in this space. The role of the body will be to provide guidance and oversight throughout the development of the plan, and especially to advise on the development of the implementation framework, and assist with what we're calling the plan while doing concept, which essentially is a set of pilot projects that are aimed at fast tracking some of the key action areas that we've identified so far. And we'll be working with the multi-stakeholder governance committee to further develop these and push them forward as we move forward. We really want this stakeholder governance committee to have a meaningful role in the outcomes of the plan, to challenge us in town staff and to challenge the consultant team, and really to take ownership of the process. This plan is, as I said, to be co-created between us and the community, or the community as a whole. Next slide, please. So just quickly, this is the current membership of the multi-stakeholder governance committee. I will not go into detail about who everybody on here is, but you can see if you just scan through, we have a lot of really interesting folks, a wide range of interesting groups represented here, local utilities, local environmental groups and organizations. There are town departments represented who we think are crucial to this process, post-secondary institutions, the Credit Valley Conservation, local businesses involved in energy management and the green economy, and representatives from the community at large. This is, we feel, a really exciting and highly qualified group of people. I can tell you we've already had one meeting with these folks, and they're very astute and enthusiastic about the work that we're doing. So we're really pleased to have them here, and we think they'll be a real vital asset in providing external input and guidance into this plan. But that's not the only type of external input that we're looking for in the plan. We really want to hear from the community as a whole as well. This event is meant to kick off the stakeholder engagement process throughout the development of this plan. So we really want to hear from everybody, and there will be tons of opportunities to get involved throughout the development of this plan. So back to you, Lisa, to talk about the next section in our meeting. Thanks.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it. So now we want to hear from you. It's the start of our breakout groups. In a minute, you will be assigned into a breakout room. You'll have 15 minutes to discuss these 2 questions. What excites you about the low carbon transition strategy? And the second question is, what do you want to learn more about? A facilitator from the town will be joining you in your breakout room. They'll be listening to you and capturing your thoughts. People should aim to keep their responses brief. Let's share the air. Keep your responses to about a minute so everybody has a chance to talk and share. If there's more that you want to say, please post your questions to Let's Talk Halton, to the Let's Talk Halton Hills portal, and we can elaborate answers in that platform. As mentioned, the facilitator will take notes, and then they'll have a minute or 2 to summarize what they heard from your group. I really hope you enjoy your breakout session, and I'll see you back in 15 minutes.
And possibly taking our solar capabilities and our solar rooftops to a higher level, even though, you know, we do have winter sort of thing, but we do get a lot of sun here, and possibly we could take that a little bit further. So, and then on the second question, it was more, I think, you know, it generated a lot more questions and actual answers. And they wanted to know more about how residential use will actually contribute to greenhouse gas emissions, and they want to talk about how some data was actually collected. Like someone pointed out, there's a lot of trucks in Halton Hills, and how did you actually get that data for the vehicle emissions? So I can share the questions with you that came out, but those are two of the comments that stood out.
Wonderful. Thanks, Jennifer. And we will get all those questions, like we said, and we'll post the answers to Let's Talk Halton Hills. Thanks, Jennifer. Megan, can we hear from you and your group next?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of our, okay, so for what excited everybody, I think the kind of the common one was everybody was really excited at how diverse the group was that you guys were consulting with the governance body. We had a lot of different sectors, people. We had a few people that mentioned it was really nice to see people of all ages. So that seems to be one of like the main themes in terms of what excited us about low carbon. And we also had other stuff like that. It's really nice to see the municipality getting kind of team seriously and that kind of stuff. And then in terms of what do we want to learn more about, we have quite a few. Probably one I think would be exceptionally worthwhile is they were wondering what kind of incentives we could see to try and get people from all sectors, including residents, on board. So, you know, what kind of impact will it have on commercial property owners versus residents versus that kind of thing?
Sounds good. Incentives, always a big one to mention. Awesome. Thank you so much. Naomi, can we hear from your group now?
You bet, for sure. So we had a good discussion. A big through line was essentially they were excited about what the city can do, and sort of wondering a bit more, curious, you know, sort of about that. And so that would sort of dovetail with what they would like to learn more about, which is, you know, where are the sort of municipal, provincial, and jurisdiction, you know, sort of boundaries around what's possible. And happy to report that also everyone at least who spoke seemed like supportive and excited by the aggressive goal, which was really wonderful to hear. And then we had a discussion too about climate action examples, you know, to what excites us from other sort of jurisdictions. And we got into a really great discussion about the incentives around electric vehicles and also the pros and cons of course, electric vehicles, because it's continued resource, you know, sort of use. So we were just sort of started to get into the granular sort of aspects of transportation, because and it was noted that We're noticing a lot of people, of course, who live in Halton Hills work outside of Halton Hills, so distance comes up. But with the pandemic, more businesses and employers have been embracing working from home. And so, what are some lessons from that in the pandemic that we could adopt, or sort of perhaps keep going forward with respect to travel and emissions?
Well, that sounds great. Excellent. Thanks, Naomi. Great feedback.
No problem.
Darmin, can we hear from you next, please?
Yes, sure. Thank you. Yeah, so again, in our groups too, it was some great ideas and lots of excitement. So regarding what excites you most about the low carbon transition strategy, I won't repeat the others, but one of the things that came up was the goal of net zero is very aspirational goal and very exciting for the town to be able to try to achieve that goal, and it was mentioned that the town is of a perfect size to make it happen. And the good start was about the analysis on the emissions, which sets a great baseline, which is essential for us to map the journey. With regards to and also it was mentioned about the multi-stakeholder, multi-sector approach to get input from the different sectors. With regards to what do you want to learn more about? So again, very exciting to learn about best practices around the globe, which we can take and apply to our community, and also to inspire our residents and about some of the incentives, some programs, ease of access to those programs, so that we can demonstrate some payoffs and return on applying those programs to inspire the whole community.
Excellent. Wow. You had great discussions. Thank you very much, Darmin. Michael, can we hear from you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the folks that in our group were excited that we are taking action on this, that we're doing our part to take care of the planet, and excited that we're moving faster than some other communities in this area. So that's good to see. And in terms of what people wanted to know more about, really just interested in more detail overall, specifically questions about what types of technologies we'll be adopting, what sequencing we'll be using for implementing the low carbon actions, how we'll pay for it, and the financial implications for all of this stuff that we have to do, and really how to get involved in the plan itself.
Great.
Implementing the solution.
Awesome. Love it. Solutions, my favorite word. So thank you everyone for participating in the live virtual open house. As mentioned previously, this session has been recorded along with all your questions. The recording and the Q&As will be posted on Let's Talk Halton Hills for everyone to view as part of this project. The development of the low carbon transition strategy is planning to take us into the summer 2021. So there's going to be a lot of opportunities for you to get involved in helping us support and create this plan. The town will be holding public engagement events throughout this year, and as we develop this, or as they develop this the strategy, and hosting surveys and other opportunities as well through the Let's Talk Halton Hills page. So please bookmark that page and check in often, as there will be great updates there. Because we know you all can't wait until we're finished the plan, we will be acting, and we are going to be adopting what we call a plan while we do, or what the town calls a plan what we do approach. What this means is they will be taking work on as a pilot program over the coming months that they hope will accelerate their climate action plan. Very exciting stuff out of Halton Hills. So please, if you haven't signed up already, visit the town's climate change webpage and the Let's Talk Halton Hills page for the project. URLs are on the side, and please sign up to get those updates and keep tabs on what's going on and how you can get involved and participate. So on behalf of the town of Halton Hills, the mayor, the Honorable Mayor Rick Bennett, Town and Regional Councillor Jane Fogel, all the councillors on the call today, please, thank you so much for taking the time this evening, sharing your thoughts with us. We hope you all stay well, take care, be well, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great night.